For leaving my family in the woods for their own good? It takes a while to understand that there are losses that do not end on the day of the funeral. I thought the hardest part had been seeing Michael die. Then I had to learn that there was still another part left. My husband died of liver cancer. When I say it like that, it sounds brief, almost neat, but it was not. There were months of hospitals, tests, doctors speaking in low voices, good days that in the end were not so good, and a house that slowly filled with medicines, with silences, and with things we no longer knew where to put. When he finally passed away, the apartment remained intact on the outside and shattered on the inside. The mug where he drank his coffee was still in the same place. His jacket was still behind the door. Life looked the same and was not the same at all. I was left alone with my daughter Lily, who was 10 years old at the time. I say alone, even though in those days my family was all over us all the time. My mom Diane would arrive with food. My dad Robert spoke little but showed up. My younger brother Brian started getting too involved in matters that were none of his business. And his wife Stephanie asked the kind of questions that seem polite until you look closely at what is behind them. Michael and I had built a small chain of coffee shops called Evergreen Coffee. We started with a 4-table spot in the Highlands neighborhood of Denver, a counter, a pastry display case, and many hours of work. Over the years we already had 9 locations across the Denver metro area, and some spots along the Front Range in Colorado. We were not a huge company, but we were a solid operation with payroll, suppliers, credits, company accounts, and a brand that had taken us years to get off the ground. There was money there. Not enough to make us magazine rich, but definitely several $100,000 between the operation, the accounts, the house, and a life insurance policy that Michael had taken out when Lily was born. I never talked about it, but Brian did know. Michael had also left his will in order. Everything went to Lily, managed by me as long as she was a minor. After Michael's death, Brian started making comments that at another time might have just seemed clumsy to me and nothing more. You cannot keep handling the business alone. There are things you will miss. Maybe it is best if someone helps you with the administration. Stephanie went down the same path, but more subtly. Just check the beneficiaries and power of attorney documents carefully. Right now, a misplaced signature can get you into trouble. Think about Lily. It always ended like that. On Lily. My parents were not that direct, but they did not defend me either. My dad had gone years without arguing much with Brian. My mom had the habit of believing that whoever speaks with the most confidence is the one who is right. I was exhausted, sleeping poorly, eating worse, and doing enough just by getting to the office, signing what was urgent, looking at schools, getting back home, and managing to get Lily to eat some dinner. I started accepting help out of pure exhaustion. In those days, people kept repeating the same thing to me in different words. That I had to get out, that I was thinking, that for my sake and the girl's sake I needed to clear my head. I heard it at the office, at home, in the car, in the voicemails they sent me. One afternoon I went out to the balcony with a cup of tea that got cold in my hands, and Lily found me there. You did not eat again? I was not hungry. Then drink at least that. She lifted the cup with just a finger so I would see it. Grandpa said tea does not fix anything, but at least it takes the cold away. She spoke like that, not trying to act like an adult, but understanding more than I would have liked. That weekend my mom arrived with the idea already put together. Brian found a beautiful place in the Rocky Mountains near Winter Park. Woods, fresh air, a quiet campground. We are going for 2 nights. It will be good for me, for you, and for the girl. I am not in the mood to go sleep in the woods. Do not exaggerate, my dad said from the window. It is 2 days for you guys. Just 2 days. I am barely going back to the office. Brian appeared in the kitchen as if given a cue. That is exactly why you need to get out of here. And Lily too. Stephanie was next to him, very dressed up for a Sunday at noon. Besides, she said, kids like that place. I did not like that they spoke as if it were already settled. I also did not like realizing that a part of me was already too tired to fight. When we told Lily, her face changed. Are we really going to the woods? It seems so. The one your grandpa said smells different when it rains. Yes, and there are squirrels, I guess. And can you see stars? I did not answer right away. I watched her go from the living room to the dining room with contained excitement, as if she were embarrassed to look so happy. At that moment I thought that maybe even if just for her it was worth a try. We left early Saturday to beat the traffic. Even so, between leaving the city, the highway, and the final climb up into the mountains, almost 2.5 hours went by. Brian and Stephanie rode in their SUV with their son Connor. My parents drove theirs. Lily and I went with them. My mom had filled the trunk with blankets, a cooler full of sandwiches and snacks, thermoses of coffee, fruit, cheese, crackers, a camp stove, plates, and who knows how many more bags. It looked like we were leaving for a week. Past Idaho Springs, the fog rolled in. Then came the winding road. The pine trees, the moisture on the windshield, the feeling of leaving the city noise behind. Up in the high area, my cell phone still showed 1 bar occasionally. As soon as Brian turned off onto a dirt road and we went deeper into the woods, the signal was completely lost. "How nice," Stephanie said, putting her phone away. "No one is going to bother us." I looked out the window. I did not think it was relaxing. I thought we were further away than they had told me. It was not the most crowded area. You could tell. There was a wide clearing, some old wooden picnic tables, a circle of stones for a campfire, damp logs, and a trail heading down through the trees toward a denser part. Further ahead, you could hear running water. Brian said he had chosen that spot because higher up, where more people gathered, there was a lot of noise, music, and children everywhere. Down there, according to him, we were going to be left in peace. He and my dad set up the tents. My mom arranged the food. Stephanie brought out a blanket, cups, and a bag of marshmallows to roast at night. Lily and Connor started jumping from stone to stone next to a little ditch where thin, clear water ran. I sat on a log with a cup of tea, watching everyone move as if they knew exactly what to do. For a while, I let myself be convinced that maybe this was not so bad. 2 days with no meetings, no bills, without Michael's empty desk on the other side of the office. At night we made a campfire. My mom heated up coffee and hot chocolate. The kids fought over the least burned marshmallows. Brian and my dad argued for a bit about the firewood. First seriously and then not so much. Stephanie took pictures and said she would send them to us later. I laughed. Not just to be polite. I really laughed. It was hard, but it came out. I kept looking at Lily's face in the firelight and thought of Michael. I imagined him there making too much coffee, saying that no one knew how to start a fire properly, inventing a breakfast that would take us all morning to make and that we would have loved anyway. I did not cry. By that point, crying did not always happen when you wanted it to. Sometimes the pain stayed deeper inside and just weighed heavy. We went to sleep late. Lily fell asleep right away. I heard her breathe for a long time before closing my eyes. Outside I could still hear voices, dishes, short footsteps. I remember thinking that maybe I really would be able to handle what came next, not that any of it would go away. Just that maybe I was going to hold up. It was not fully dawn yet when Lily touched my shoulder. "Mom, what happened?" "Let's go see the overlook." "What overlook?" "Brian said last night that there is a little one up here. We will not take long." I did not want to move. My body ached from sleeping on the ground. But she was awake, dressed, wearing her sneakers, and holding a flashlight in her hand. "Please. We will bundle up." I put 2 water bottles, 3 granola bars, a light jacket, the lighter I always kept in the car, and an old compass that had belonged to Michael into a backpack. We left without making a sound. The trail went up through tall pines and wet dirt. We reached a small hill where the landscape opened up a bit. Below, a gray reservoir could be seen through the fog. "It is pretty," Lily said. "Yes." She stayed quiet for a moment. "Do you think my dad would have wanted to come again?" "Yes, and he would have said I brought too little food." She laughed softly and hugged my side. We returned to the camp around 8 in the morning. Even before arriving, I felt that something was wrong. First it was the silence, then the emptiness. The SUVs were gone, the other tents were gone too, no cooler, no stove, no bags, no chairs, no large thermoses. Only our tent remained, sagging a bit on one side, and the wooden table with a single mug on it. Lily pulled my sleeve. "Mom, where are they?" I did not answer her. I walked to where Brian's SUV had been. The tires had left marks in the damp earth. I looked everywhere hoping someone would come out saying they had left to get something, that it was a joke, that there was an explanation. No one came out. "They cannot have left," I said, but I said it to myself. Lily pointed to the table. "There is something there." Under a rock was a folded piece of paper. I opened it. I recognized Brian's handwriting immediately. It is for your own good. Trust me. I just felt myself empty out completely, as if a cold hollow space had settled inside me. Mom, Lily said with a different voice now. They left us. I crouched down to look at her face to face. My legs were shaking. Yes, they will come back. I looked back at the tire tracks. I did not want to tell her a complete lie. I do not know. She turned pale. She did not cry. She hugged my waist tightly and I squeezed her back. I checked what we had. In the backpack were the 2 bottles of water, 3 granola bars, some napkins, the lighter, and the compass. Inside the tent there were 2 sleeping bags, a light blanket, and a flashlight. Nothing else. They had taken even the first aid kit and the rest of the food. They left just enough so as not to seem like monsters if anyone asked, but not enough for us to get out easily. That is when I understood that this had not been an impulsive act. Brian had planned it, Stephanie too. And my parents had gotten into their vehicles knowing what they were doing. We are not staying here, I told Lily. We have to move. Where to? I am not sure, but the water might lead us to a trail or a lower area. I took down the tent the best I could, packed the essentials, and started walking with her, following the narrow stream we had seen next to the camp. The first part was slow. The trail was there at times and faded at others. I still thought that maybe we would run into someone soon, another camp, a road. It did not happen. I set up the tent next to the water. Before it got dark, I gave Lily half a bar and a few small sips of water. Are you not going to eat? I ate a little while ago. She looked at me for a second. I guess she did not believe me, but she was too tired to argue. She got into the sleeping bag and stayed quiet. On the second day, everything hurt. My back, knees, shoulders. We kept following the same stream bed with the idea that as we went down, something bigger had to appear. A road, a town, a fence. Nothing. In some sections we had to push through branches and mud. Sometimes the water flowed between rocks and we had to go around. Other times we ended up on a steeper slope and then it was not so easy to go back up. Without realizing it, we wandered out of the camping area into a denser part of the forest. I realized it too late. At noon we finished another bar. Lily was walking quietly now. She only asked occasionally how much further we had to go. I answered what I could without overpromising. On the third day, the hunger stopped being hunger and became weakness. I found some blackberries in a clearing and gave them to her little by little. I checked them carefully first, more out of fear than knowledge. Lily made a face. They are sour. Better that than nothing. I tried to smile. She did too. It did not last long. That day I began to think we had taken the wrong route. If we turned back, I did not know exactly which way to go, and keeping straight did not guarantee anything either. The water kept pulling us downhill, and on one of those descents, after slipping twice, I no longer had the strength to climb back up to where we had been. I decided to keep going. On the 4th day we found an old cabin, probably for Forest Service or old shelter use. It was half collapsed, with a rusted metal roof and a crooked door, but it blocked the wind and the rain. Inside there was a rusty cot, a broken chair, a radio that did not work, and pure dust. There was no food, not a single can or bottle. Even so, that afternoon it became the best thing that had happened to us in 4 days. That same night, Lily started running a fever. First she said she was cold, then she started shivering. I touched her forehead and got scared. I laid her down, covered her with the sleeping bags, gave her water little by little, and put a damp cloth on her. Outside, the forest sounded massive. I had not prayed in many years, and that night I prayed. Not beautifully or with orderly words. I prayed however I could. Do not leave me, I told her when she was half asleep. No, you neither. On the 5th day we did not walk. I only went out for what was necessary, for water and something I could give her to eat. I found some berries, very few, and some fallen pine nuts. Lily hardly wanted anything. She asked me several times if we were still alone. I told her yes, but not for long. I was not sure about that either. At some point long after the rescue, I learned what had happened outside while we were still lost. Brian and my parents initially said that I had wandered off from the camp on my own free will. In a highly altered emotional state, they said I probably did not want to be found. They changed their stories about the exact area. They talked about a different route than the one we had actually taken. That caused the search to initially move somewhere else, rather than to the ravine we had climbed down. They did not stop looking for us completely, but they helped ensure the search went wrong. By the time the contradictions became obvious, days had already passed. On the 6th day, the fever continued, although a little lower. Lily would open her eyes for a while and then fall back asleep. I spent hours listening to myself think out loud, calculating things that were completely useless, telling myself I had to stay calm when inside I was breaking. I thought a lot about Michael, about his way of telling me to breathe first and then decide. That day I did that several times, breathing just to keep from going crazy. On the 7th day, Lily wanted to sit outside the cabin. Just a little bit, I told her. Yes. She spent a few minutes watching the trees move. You look very tired. I am fine. You lie badly. I let out a short laugh. She barely did too. In the afternoon, one of those storms hit that do not even give you time to think. It rained with terrifying force. The metal roof rattled. The wind came in from everywhere. Lily pressed against me and I covered her with everything we had. So she would not get more scared, I started telling her things. Silly things from when I was a little girl. Coffee recipes that Michael made as if they were experiments. Half-invented stories. Anything just to hear my voice over the rain. The 8th day dawned clearer. Everything was wet, heavy, smelling of churned earth. Lily could take a few steps, not many. I knew it was not a good idea for us to stay in the cabin any longer. If no one had found us there, it was better to move toward any sign of people. At noon I saw a line of smoke in the distance, above the trees, thin but steady. It did not look like it was from a small campfire. I told Lily we were going to head there. Will we get there today? I do not know. Then do not tell me yes. No, I am not going to tell you yes. Okay, then let us go. The 9th day was the worst. Lily could no longer bear to walk much. I put her on my back as best I could with the backpack in front. We would advance a few meters, stop and keep going. I fell twice. The second time I fell and lay on the ground for a moment, out of breath. Mom, I am right here. Put me down. Not yet. Yes, I can walk in a little bit. I no longer even knew if I was angry or scared, I just kept going. Step, water, mud, rock, breathe. And then again on the 10th day, we reached a more solid structure than the first, a kind of abandoned lookout base with concrete block walls and a broken window. Inside there was a table, some old newspapers, and a radio that would not turn on. From the outside, a wider clearing opened up upwards. The smoke I had seen made more sense from there. It was not as far as it had seemed to me. Very faintly in the background, you could also hear the noises of a motor or tools. People. Shortly after, we heard the helicopter. At first, I thought I was confusing the sound with the wind. Then it became clear. I ran outside. I remembered something Michael had told me once about distress signals. I dragged branches into the clearing, arranged them as best I could, lit old paper to make smoke and started screaming. I waved my jacket with both arms. The helicopter flew past for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. Then it turned around. Mom! Lily shouted from the door. It came back. This time I did start crying. They took us down first to a safe zone and from there transferred us to the hospital in Denver. In the hospital everything felt strange. The clean sheets, the smell of disinfectant, the white light, a nurse asking for my name and date of birth, as if I still belonged to a normal routine. Lily was dehydrated, weak, with a mild respiratory infection and her body completely exhausted. My feet were badly blistered, my shoulder was strained, and I had a fatigue that no longer felt like sleepiness. The first 2 days I spent watching her sleep and answering basic questions. On the 3rd day, an investigator from the district attorney's office arrived with a file and a copy of the note. I need you to tell me exactly what happened, she said. She sat across from me and explained the first things, the most immediate ones. Brian had declared that I had gone off into the woods voluntarily, in a very serious state of emotional distress, and that the note was proof of a decision I had made. They had also said that in previous days I had talked about disappearing, and that is why they thought I had gone off alone with the girl or that I did not want to be found. That is a lie, I told her. We have already seen several inconsistencies, she replied. That is why we are expanding the investigation. That first visit was only regarding the abandonment and the falsehood of what they had declared. The rest I found out little by little. We were discharged 2 days later. We returned to the apartment and it felt foreign. The clothes were still in the closets. The plates were where I had left them. There was a mug of Michael's on the drying rack. Everything was still and at the same time out of place. The next day, Jennifer Lawson arrived, the lawyer who had been handling the company's corporate matters for years. She brought a folder full of copies, bank statements, and official documents. There are 2 fronts, she told me as soon as she sat down. The criminal one in the Mountain County for the abandonment and false statements, and the financial one here because they tried to make some very serious moves against your assets. What kind of moves? They presented a power of attorney for administration that you supposedly signed over to Brian and an outside lawyer weeks before the trip. With that, they tried to access company accounts and request information. They also sent a notice to the insurance company regarding your policy. And there is a more recent forged will, where Brian appears with temporary powers over the administration while Lily is a minor. I just looked at her. I no longer felt surprise. I felt a dry rage. My will has been done since Lily was 7 years old. I know. We already sent a certified copy. The notary office that appears on the new document was already under scrutiny. There are also strange transactions with a broker. This is not going to be quick, Amanda. But we definitely have a case. I want to press charges. We already started. But I need everything. Messages, voicemails, emails, anything that shows they pressured you with the trip, or that they had been talking about the business. I gave it to her. Voicemails of Brian insisting that I could no longer manage alone. Emails where he asked for temporary access to administrative matters. A message from Stephanie asking if I had already checked the beneficiary information in case something happened. As soon as I put it all together, I understood that it had not been a Saturday night whim. They had been paving the way for a long time. About 2 weeks after being discharged, I was summoned to a hearing at the district attorney's office. There I saw my family again, not in a living room or at an awkward meal, but in a cold office with a long table, unopened bottles of water, and the sound of the air conditioning blowing too hard. My mom held a tissue in her hand. My dad would not look up. Brian was stiff. Stephanie arrived dressed as if she were going to a board meeting. My mom tried to speak first. Amanda, we thought that you... No, I told her. You did not think. Or rather, you thought exactly what suited you. That is not fair, my dad murmured. I looked right at him. You left and you abandoned us in the woods. Your granddaughter and me. Brian clenched his jaw. We wanted you to calm down. You left me without food, without a first aid kit, without a car, and without a signal. You had things. Yes. 3 granola bars and 2 bottles of water. Stephanie chimed in with that flat tone she had for everything. You were doing very poorly, Amanda. We all saw it. Your messages, your state, how you were handling yourself. Brian believed someone had to restore order in the company and in everything else, and that included deciding whether Lily and you came back or not. I did not answer. The investigating agent opened a folder and arranged several copies on the table. Just to be clear, she said, the signature on this power of attorney does not match Mrs. Reynolds's, nor does the one on the will presented after the trip. There are also inconsistencies in the notification to the insurance company and in the statements regarding the exact location of the abandonment. My mom started crying, but it no longer sounded like pain to me, it sounded like fear. We wanted to help you, she said. Well, you did a terrible job, I replied. A terrible job. After that, the case started appearing in the media. Not because I wanted it to, but because it was impossible to hide a story like that. Mother and daughter located after 10 days in the forest, family under investigation for abandonment, false statements, and attempted financial fraud. They called me from TV shows for interviews, and from people who wanted to give me a voice. I did not accept. I did not have the strength to tell anything to anyone who was not legally obligated to listen to me. The first night I was finally able to sleep at home. Lily stayed on the couch with a mug of hot chocolate. When she opened her eyes, she asked me the question I had been dodging for days. They wanted us not to come back. I sat next to her. I do not know everything they thought, but I do know they did not expect to see us back. She stayed quiet for a moment. But we did. Yes. Well, that was all, and that was enough for me. 3 weeks later was the initial hearing. Lily did not enter the courtroom. She stayed with Jennifer and a psychologist in a separate room. I went in with my stomach in knots. The prosecution presented the note. The family's contradictions about the place where I had supposedly wandered off, the rescue report, the state in which they found us, phone records between Brian, Stephanie, and an outside lawyer, and the preliminary expert reports on signatures and financial maneuvers. It became clear that the criminal case was taking one path and the financial case another, even though everything was born from the same plan. An employee connected to the notary office also testified, admitting to having received documentation from Brian and Stephanie to expedite procedures that, according to him, he did not review thoroughly. They did not believe him much. Brian did not look my way. Stephanie remained rigid. My parents had the faces of people who finally understood that this could no longer be fixed with apologies. The judge formally charged them. Brian for the abandonment of a minor, false statements, and other crimes that would continue to be compiled. Stephanie for her involvement in the documents and her role in the abandonment. My parents were subjected to formal investigation for maintaining a false story and for their cooperation in the events. It was not a sentence, but it was no longer just my word against theirs. The following months were heavy. The criminal case ran its course, the financial one too. There were expert assessments, official documents, more testimonies, frozen accounts, demands sent to the insurance company, audits of the notary office, and a long fight to shield the administration of Evergreen Coffee. While everything was getting sorted out, I kept going to therapy, taking care of my daughter, handling school matters, and walking into the office with a strange feeling, as if anyone could just barge back into what was mine. By then, Lily and I had already moved. I left the apartment in Capitol Hill because I could not walk into the kitchen without feeling like Michael had just walked out of it. I rented a small house in Littleton, nothing luxurious, but with a backyard. I planted a rosebush in the middle, not as a symbol or anything like that, just because Michael liked them and I wanted to take care of something alive with my own hands. The trial began several months later and lasted for weeks. There were handwriting experts explaining why the signatures were not mine. Bank personnel describing attempts to access information and accounts. People from the insurance company detailing the notice they received and why they halted it. Authorities from the Mountain County explaining how the family's initial statements diverted part of the search toward a different route. That part hurt to hear, but it also gave me some clarity. It was not a tragedy that spiraled out of control. There was intent from the beginning. I testified only once. I recounted everything from Michael being sick to the helicopter, the campfire, the overlook, the silence upon returning, Lily's fever, the storm, the cabin, the smoke. While I spoke, Brian still would not look at me. Stephanie looked at me for a moment and then lowered her head. My parents cried more than once. By then, I was no longer trying to figure out if they were crying for us, for themselves, or out of shame. The verdict arrived many months after the initial hearing. To me, it felt like a lifetime. Brian was given the harshest sentence, 15 years for abandonment, fraud, document forgery, and other charges tied to the real danger he put us in. Stephanie received 11 years for her participation in the document fraud and the plot that ended in our abandonment. My parents received a lesser sentence, but enough to make it clear that they had not just been spectators. There were also rulings on the civil and commercial side to void documents, transactions, and any attempt to touch the company or Lily's assets. When I heard the sentence, I did not feel a beautiful sense of relief. That did not happen. I felt exhausted. And later, outside the courthouse, something simpler. That a door that had been open for far too long was finally closing. Then came the rest, the part that does not make it into the news or the hearings. Grocery shopping again, going to school meetings, learning to sleep without waking up at the slightest noise, stopping myself from checking the lock 3 times, being there for Lily when she had bad dreams, driving alone on the highway again without my chest tightening, returning to the coffee shop locations one by one, seeing if they still smelled like coffee or just like paperwork, letting time do its job without demanding miracles from it. Lily started painting. First trees and houses, then just colors. I started eating breakfast on Sundays again. Sometimes we would go out to pick fruit in season, Or we would stay in the backyard watching the afternoon go by. There were bad days, of course, days when a song left me breathless, or when Lily clung to me to make sure I was not going to leave. But normal days started showing up too, and normal days when you have lost so many things become valuable. One afternoon, quite some time later, we were sitting in the backyard watching the rosebush sway in the wind. Lily rested her head on my shoulder. It is over now, I thought for a moment. Not everything. Some things take longer. But the worst part, yes. Yes, the worst part is. She stayed quiet. Then she said, "That is good." I hugged her and we stayed like that for a while. There was no need to say much more anymore. That night I turned off the kitchen light. I went to see Lily sleeping and stood in the doorway for a second. She was breathing evenly with one hand outside the blanket. I closed the door without making a sound. Outside in the backyard the rosebush barely moved with the breeze, and for the first time in a long time, I felt that just that was enough. What I understood was this. Sometimes you do not see the manipulation because it comes wrapped in the words of family, of concern, of "we want to help you." They did not yell at me or take things right in front of my face. They slowly cornered me when I was the most tired, the saddest, the easiest to push. They gave opinions about my daughter, my house, my work, and paperwork that was none of their business. And I let several things slide because I thought that in grief you also become unfair, distrustful, unbearable. Now I know that is not true, that there is a moment when help stops being help and becomes control. And if to take care of you someone needs to decide for you, mess with your money, use your children, or make you feel incompetent, then they are not taking care of you. Sometimes the most important boundary is not with a stranger. It is with the people you spent years calling family. Comment. I've been thinking a lot about how important it is to honor our own self-respect after reading stories like this one. Sometimes the people closest to us test the boundaries we need to set for our own good. I believe real kindness starts with being honest about what we can and cannot accept in our lives. Healing takes time, yet choosing to protect your peace makes all the difference. Taking responsibility for our well-being shows real strength, not weakness. We all know that quiet moment when we realize we deserve better support. It inspires me to keep working on clearer communication in my own relationships. I hope you feel encouraged to reflect on the connections that truly lift you up. Learning to choose calm over confusion has brought me so much growth. Thank you for joining me here and for caring about these deeper lessons. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.